Hey guys, welcome to episode 20 of the Weekly Update, the series where I talk about the paddles that I hit throughout the week. Now, for this week, we're going to talk about some smaller paddle companies that are looking to make their way into the performance paddle market, as well as talk about some first impressions of newer paddles that I hit. And there are going to be quite a bit of them, so let's get into it. All right, the first paddle company we're going to talk about is going to be Warping Point. So this is a company that was primarily selling on Amazon, doing more fun and colorful paddles, but now they're trying to get more into that performance paddle market. So the first thing they've done is sign Tina Pisnik as a pro, and next they've also just gone out and released a lot of new paddles. So let's talk about some of them. Now, the first paddle we're going to talk about from them is going to be their Neon. So this is an elongated paddle that's really similar to the Hirachi shape, so it has that curved top, though the handle is slightly shorter at 5.5 inches. For the swing weight, we got 117, and the twist weight, we got 6.65. Now, this does use Gen 3 style construction, but what I noticed when they sent me a picture of the interior of this paddle is that it actually uses the same construction as the 11Six24 Powers and the SLK Eras. So instead of that diving board style of foam that's popular with a lot of Gen 3s, this actually has that full EVA foam ring that goes all the way around the paddle. Though unlike the Era and the 11Six24 paddles, this doesn't use fiberglass in the layup. In fact, this is just carbon fiber. So when I was hitting this, it definitely felt a lot more plush, and the overall power is actually stepped down from both. While those I would classify in the power category, I wouldn't classify this as a power paddle. It's just a step below that. And I would say it's a step above something like a Friday Fever. Like it's not that soft, but it's just more forgiving compared to the Era and the 11Six24 paddles. It's more plush, there's more give into the face. And so because of that, this is more controllable, but you're not going to have the firepower of those other two series. Now, one thing we've noticed with the 11Six24 Power series is that they've shown to be more durable compared to other Gen 3 style paddles. So hopefully with this construction style that they're mimicking from 11Six24, this is going to be a more durable Gen 3 paddle than some of the others on the market. Now let's get into the price of this paddle because this actually goes for $75 after discount code. So it retails for $100, but after my discount code, that price drops down to $75, which is very, very low for a Gen 3 style paddle. In fact, that's probably one of the lowest we've seen here. Now, one other thing is that this is only going for EPA approval. I'm not sure if that's passed yet, but I don't believe this is going for US EPA approval. That said, if you want a cheaper, like budget-friendly Gen 3 style paddle, mainly for rec play, or if you do play UPA events, I think this is a solid option. You know, it's a good, more controllable paddle compared to a power paddle. I would say it's more in that all-court leaning power category after all the time I spent with this. A step down from the SLK Era and the 11Six24 Powers, but you do gain a bit more control. So overall, not a bad pickup, especially at this price point. Now, there were some other paddles that they sent over, but I didn't get too much of a chance to really hit with them. So one is going to be their Rhythm series, which I believe is Gen 1.5 construction that uses that wider 10 millimeter cell core. Now, this is going to come in elongated, hybrid, and wide body. And the other that I hit briefly is going to be their Aether. So this is the same thing, also just that's actually, no, this is thermoformed, but it has a Kevlar surface and it also uses that wider 10 millimeter cell. So what I'm imagining with this is that it's going to be like a softer feeling 11Six24 Alpha and a softer Mark on Mark. I had a few shots with it and it seemed fine. Didn't see anything noteworthy, but I will try to hit this one more in the future. As for this one, I haven't hit this one yet, but I'm assuming it's going to be even softer. Now, both of these are going to retail, I believe, for $90, which should drop under $70 after our code. So there could be really good beginner-friendly options. I do need to hit them a bit more to see how they stack up against some of the other like $90 beginner paddles out there, but I can anticipate both of these being like really good beginner options for people to pick up for people that are on a budget. Now, in terms of how I see Warping Point as a company, I will say I don't think they're a company that's going to do anything revolutionary or have any like groundbreaking new tech. But I do think they're a company that is doing their best to follow the new trends, and they are coming in at really low price points. So if you are a player on a budget, I think this is a company to watch. All right, next company we're going to talk about is going to be Helios. So they've mainly done retail stores and they do have like a Gen 2 line on the website, but they haven't really made a big push into like the reviewer space or like, the market that we really sell for. But the paddles I got to try from them were their Gen 3 style paddles. Now, Jacob and I did talk about like the Gen 3 Helios we both tried last week. Um, in terms of how this is, it's got 114 swing weight and twist weight at 6.00. So on paper, it sounds really similar to something like a Friday Fever. So that same like Gen 3 style construction, that's both really similar on them and both coming like lighter out of the box. So that leaves room for customization. I do think it's a bit less hollow feeling than the Fever and a little bit more powerful, but overall, like nothing too crazy about this one, just a solid like all around paddle. Um, Now they did have another prototype I got to try that had a different surface, and I thought this one was a lot more interesting. So it's one of those paddles that's got a loud pop to it. It's got more pop than it has power. So I thought that the overall power levels were actually higher than the Gen 3s I was testing next to it. But it is one of those where like the full drives on the paddle, they were still like in that power paddle category, but it was mainly the pop that was more impressive. I don't think either of those paddles are going to be released anytime soon. I don't really know their full release plan. But in terms of how I view Helios, like based on the prototypes and discussions that I had with them, I do think that they are a company that has potential and it is a company that I would look out for in the future. All right, moving on. The next paddle company we're going to talk about is going to be Srikel. Not actually sure how that's pronounced, but we talked about this paddle last week, and that's going to be the Aura Pro. So this is a Gen 3 style paddle from them. For the swing weight, we got 120, twist weight 6.55. I don't know too much beyond the construction. They haven't really shared much other than that is a Gen 3 style paddle. And in terms of like overall power levels, now that I've had more time with it, I would say it's a step, not like a step, but like slightly higher than a Gen 3s. I tested this next to like a Gen 3s Hyperion, and I found this to have more power and pop and just more of that hollow feel. Um, that said, this isn't USAP approved, and I don't know if it's going to be approved or slash when they applied for it. I think it's all still pending on, um, the testing. So I'm not really clear on that. And I would put this kind of in that same range as the paddle shop planker. Both just paddles that managed to clone the Gen 3 tech of Yola and also reach similar power levels, which not many Gen 3s have been able to do, or Gen 3 clones have been able to do. So this and the planker both kinda get up there, but they're both not approved. But at the same time, they both are pretty affordable. I believe that the planker was like $70 and this is $100, and that drops down even lower after a discount code. So if you do want something for a rec play, then I would consider this. Um, Especially like maybe if you wanted something that hit a bit harder than a Gen 3s and had a bit of a longer handle since I want to say this is around 6 inches. But I think this is just more of a fun paddle. I just not sure about the whole approval process on this, so can't really fully recommend it yet. All right, and the next series we hit from them is going to be their Durafoams. So this is a 16 millimeter full foam paddle series. This hits really hard. It gets close to the levels of those illegal EVA foam paddles. So think something like the Kudef New Era, Diadem Hush, or like those Rhombus EVA foam paddles that kind of released for people that had like elbow issues or people that just wanted to have fun. Um, this gets really close to those levels and it just hits really hard where when you swing, like the velocity of the ball doesn't die down. Like it can carry across the entire court at like full speed, which is I personally think is pretty dangerous. And this is not USAP approved either. And I honestly don't think it's gonna pass, just because of how hard this paddle is hitting. So if you think like of something like a ripple hits hard, this is a complete step above a ripple. That's how hard this thing hits. So it does have three shapes. I mainly hit the elongated one because that's the only one that's normal. It's if you look at the other shapes, this is their wide body. Now look at the handle compared to the actual paddle face. It just makes the whole head here really unstable because of how small the paddle face is compared to the handle. Pretty sure this is above 6 inches. And same thing with their wide body. Also just really insanely long handle and small paddle face. So kind of similar to I think what Volair is doing, but yeah, the only one with a normal shape is going to be their elongated. But even overall, I don't think I would really recommend this paddle just because of how dangerous it is. Even though it is cheap, I don't think this will pass USAP testing. All right, now let's move on into some first impressions, starting off with the harmonies from Pickleball Apes. I mainly hit the X, which is their elongated version. Now, this one has a swing weight of 120 and a twist weight of 6.45. And I guess if you're curious about the other numbers, the S is 114 and 6.55, and the V I got 109 and 7.55. So in terms of how this plays, I found it actually very, very similar to the Pulse. It was kind of like if you had like a brand new Pulse and a brand new Harmony, I think it was a bit hard to tell the differences side by side. I would say the Harmony does hit a bit harder, and um, the overall feel, might get a little bit more juice on it. But other than that, like they both have that really same like all court style, like dense feel. Yeah, and I would say they're both kind of in that all court leaning control category. This one like just like a little bit higher. Um, I think just people looking for more control in their games and aren't looking for a power paddle. I think this is a great option because I think the feel of the face is very nice, really, really dense, really buttery and smooth. But yeah, it's nothing too crazy. I think it's just good all-court style paddle. So nothing too much to say about that, but I still think that's a good pickup. And I do need to do more durability testing, but have heard that it holds up better than the Pulse series, and I actually think that's better because I did like the Pulse series without it breaking in and getting too uncontrollable. So this is one to consider for sure. All right, the next paddle we're going to talk about is going to be the Torch series from Revolin. So this does use like a interesting like lava flex surface, I believe is what it's called, instead of like the standard carbon fiber. And the construction is actually really similar to the paddle tech, but the difference is that it doesn't have those like ball bearing weights. So the numbers overall are pretty low on this. So for swing weight, we got 114 and twist weight was 5.55. So as you can imagine, this is a really light paddle and it can really take up a lot of weight for customization. And I think it really does need that weight to bump it up because the sweet spot on this paddle is tiny. Like a paddle tech, um, it's it has a really small sweet spot, but I think the sweet spot on the paddle tech is bigger. Now, when you hit the sweet spot, though, it does feel really nice. While the paddle tech does have a nice crisp feel at the face, this is more plush and it's a nicer feel in my opinion. I do like the feel on this better than the paddle techs, but I do wish to have edge film or some perimeter weighting to really bump it up, rather than having to add it on add it by yourself. But overall, I do think this is a really nice alternative to the Powtex. Um, I've only tried the elongated version, which is, I think, pretty tough to use just because of how small the sweet spot is on this. But I can see myself liking the wide body version. So hopefully I can try that out at some point. All right, next up, we're going to give some quick thoughts on the Komodo Tenet. So only hit this for a little bit, but this is going to be a power paddle from Komodo, which was a bit surprising. Now, we're actually not sure how the construction is done on this. They did mention a polypropylene core with some other things inside, but in terms of how it plays, I would say the feel of the face is kind of tingy and poppy. It's definitely got a lot of pop to this paddle, and it has a bit of that high-pitched tingy feeling that reminds me a bit of some of the Kevlar cores, but again, not 100% sure what is exactly inside this core. But it was surprising how much power this paddle had. Not like top tiers, but it's definitely up there. So didn't hit this one too much, but in terms of, you know, would I hit this one more? This is a yes. For the other ones, the other Komodo paddles I've hit, they've kind of been, a bit forgettable. So I was impressed by this one and looking forward to hitting this one more. All right, now the last paddles we're going to talk about are going to be the SLK Eras and the 11Six24 Alpha Pro Power. So starting off with the SLK Era, this is a paddle I did kind of release a small video on last week doing a small comparison. While it does use that same construction as the 11Six24 Power series, it does have like a different feel off the face still. And I do agree with Braden that it has more of a fuller feel, because there is a bit more give into the face. It's less hollow and stiff feeling than the Power series. And I think the feel of the face is just a bit more substantial. So that's something I found I liked better on this. But again, feel is a personal preference. So some people may like this and some people may like the feel of the Power series. Now, as for the Alpha Pro Power, I thought I would like this more because it sounded nice on paper. So what they've done is they've changed the face layup. So instead of being CFC, they pushed that carbon fiber down to be closer to the core. So it's now a CCF. And as for the core, instead of using 8 mm cells, they use the wider 10 mm cells that they were using in their old alpha paddles. Now, I thought this would sound good on paper, just being a Power Pro with more dwell time and I guess more of a pleasure feel. But the feel is just a bit interesting for me, at least how this is playing right now. While you do get the ball sinking in a bit more, and you do get that springiness of the 10 mm cells, I feel like it kind of contrasts a bit with the hollow sensation that you still feel on this paddle. If you kind of feel that hollowness on the Power Pro series, and you still feel that here, and I think there's just a bit of a disconnect in that feel, just like you get that springiness, but then also just a hollow feedback. And because of that, I actually prefer the Power Pro series to the Alpha Pro, just because you kind of feel a bit more connected with it. Just having that stiffer and hollower feel, I think that kind of goes together a bit better compared to just having this like springier, more muted, but with that hollow feedback. I don't think that goes together too well. Now, at the same time, I have heard and I've seen on Discord that people are saying that the feel does change over time and the face will soften up a bit more. So maybe the hollow sensation will go away. This is still early, just like 1 week of testing on this model at least, and I do need to try the other shapes as well. But in terms of how it is now, I think the Alpha Pro sounds better on paper, but I wish I liked it more. But unfortunately, I will say compared to the other series, the SLK Era is still going to be my favorite out of the three, followed by the Power Pro and then the Alpha Pro. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching. That was quite a bit of paddles we just covered, and I would stay tuned for next week as well because we are going to be covering some exciting ones like the Body Helix F1s and the Vatic V Core, so stay tuned for that. Now, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and if you do want to support this channel and pick up any of these paddles we've talked about today, I've added my discount code here and links to buy them in the video description below. All right, catch you guys next week. Yep.